This is a very different scene to last week in Dubai. um, in case you're listening to this later on, I'm in Oslo. I'm sitting in front of a fireplace, which is not my normal scene at home. It certainly wasn't the scene the last 2 weeks in Oman and Dubai either. But yeah, back in Oslo. George is here. G'day, George from South Africa. Yeah, that's a long way from home too, mate. Back home, Southern Hemisphere, isn't it? Yeah. It's funny how many people here are like, even like yesterday, we got to Oslo yesterday, we went through the security and the customs, and the guy's trying to like wrap his head around the fact that it's summer at home. Anyway, George knows all about that in South Africa. So yes, we're here in Oslo. First night not in a hotel for the last couple of weeks, which is really nice. We're in an Airbnb, which you've tended to do when we come back to Oslo. Of course, Charlotte being Norwegian, Oslo is the second home. But anyway, we're trying to get an Airbnb here so we can like not have people ask for your room number every single morning when you have breakfast. As much fun as travel is, some things get super, super repetitive. And it's like constantly ask for your room number. Every time you walk around with a bag, can I take your bag? But yes, it's very, very nice, but it's starting to feel like I live in a hotel. So, James, this time of night, of course, it's an Aussie. Yeah, but it's an Aussie, but in Norway. What time of night is it? Oh, it's 7:11 at home. There you go. 7 p.m. at home. So no, it is 10 a.m. and a little bit here in Oslo, and apparently it is 0 degrees as well, which is actually kind of a little bit warmish for this time of year. But yeah, apparently it's a late snow season, which kind of sucks because we've got a week in Oslo before a week snowboarding with Scott Helm as well. So I'm going to try and do next week's video, probably exactly 1 week from now, with Scott Helm from a cabin in the snow. Be fun. All right, let's do sponsors, and then I'll go on with the other stuff before I go out and get a little bit of. There's a tiny bit of sun actually coming through in Oslo, which is nice. Sponsored by 1Password Extended Access Management. You heard of these guys? Big sponsor this year. Secure every sign-in on every app, on every device. Now, of course, this particular extended access management has come by courtesy of the Collide acquisition, which is now well and truly part of 1Password. Modern security and IT teams need to make sure every identity, device, and application is secure. Only 1Password extended access management checks every box. And I think we're going to do some other cool stuff with 1Password in the year coming, because it turns out that so far not everyone has either got a password manager or, as it relates to XAM, is actually securing all of their devices. Now, having said that, if people did do all this stuff right, I would be out of a job and there'd be much less interesting stuff to talk about. So, be that as it may, what do I have on the list today? Now, I'm kind of looking all over the place because I'm holding my iPad here so I can read sponsor stuff, and I've got my PC there so I can see the messages, and this is the joy of, I guess, being on the road with this sort of gear. Oh, fun story. When we flew into Dubai 2 weeks ago, so in Brisbane, Dubai, and then it was just a transit in the airport to then go to Muscat in Oman. Flew in, same deal as always, collect all the suitcases, and we're walking out through security, and there's a couple of, I think when you're in the Middle East, all the security people look extra serious. You know, I mean, there's like the physical security people, the guys with guns at airports and stuff. They all look extra serious. And one of them like points at me and he's like, come over here, because they want to x-ray my bag as I left. So I've already collected my bag from the carousel and everything. So they want to x-ray my bag, and I was like, this must just be a random thing. Go through, they x-ray my bag, and they're like, all right, put the bag on the table, open it up. And he's going through the bag, and he obviously knows exactly where he's going, and he pulls out an audio recorder. So I took with me one of these like Rode audio, is it Rode? I forget who it is. Anyway, it's an audio recorder. So one of the dedicated units is about yay big, size of, I don't know, a fraction of the size of a shoebox, with a couple of mics. It's in a plastic case. Took it with me so Scott Helm and I could record some stuff next week. And then they're grilling me on this. And they're like, what's this for? So, recording. What do you do? Cybersecurity? Anyway, I think that they were worried that I was coming there to like record stuff. I don't know. So anyway, I managed to talk myself out of that. But I thought that was an interesting thing. I've never been pulled over before for having an audio recorder in my luggage. So yeah, fun times there, getting grilled by Dubai security. Look at the comments here. James is saying, London, I might be getting more light here in the middle of the night. Yeah. Hippobox says, hello Troy, do you know the motive behind the Internet Archive hack? Was it ever known why? I don't. I only know the party that I communicated with that sent me data who... I think it's implied that they were the first party to the breach, the person who might have been responsible for it. It's always a hard thing where data comes to me by everything from the first party to a breach all the way through to the FBI, and then in between is hobbyists who find it on popular hacking forums and InfoSec professionals and large InfoSec companies you'll know of that might find this data and go, look, this is useful, we want to let people know. But that party that sent it to me, or rather, I think the party that was responsible for the breach, might be the same party, is also the one that did the defacement, but it seems to be different to the party that did the DDoS. Now, was it just coincidental? Was there any coordination? I don't know. And if I'm honest, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen any decent information from Internet Archive about this. I certainly haven't seen any disclosure notices go to the tens of millions of people that were in that breach. And then we're back to the same old story again of data breaches do not mean, regardless of where you are, even if you're in smack bang middle of GDPR territory, they don't mean that you always have to notify the individuals in the breach. If it's not likely to cause, what's the right word? If it's not likely to jeopardise the rights and freedoms of the individuals, or in Australia under our notifiable data breach scheme, if it's not likely to cause serious harm, you don't need to tell the individuals unless it includes sensitive PII such as health data. You do have to tell the regulator, usually, there's carve-outs, usually. So you end up with situations like with the Internet Archive, they're in California, I'm sure that under CCPA they did their reporting to the, I don't know, Governor General's office or whatever it is, regulatory body-wise in California, but they haven't told the people. Now, I'm 99% sure they haven't told the people, because if they did send 30 million emails with disclosure notices, at least 30 people would then email me and go, hey, here's the notice. So that hasn't happened. And it's unfortunate because I think we all hold Internet Archive in high esteem in terms of being a non-profit for the people. And yeah, so no, look, I don't know the motive. I do not know. It could simply be because it was there. This is very, very often the motive. It's not necessarily financial, because it was there. Jane says in the US, the passengers that have all the guns, geez, TSA grabbed 6,737 firearms last year. That number actually seems small considering A, how many people there are in America, and B, how many guns there are in America. So that actually, I don't know, maybe that's good. Hippobox says, because a year ago the Internet Archive GitLab subdomain was public, and I assumed it was open source code, but they closed it due to the hack, and I'm thinking I was in a place that I shouldn't be. Well, look, I wouldn't be worried about that if you weren't then going on and doing nasty things with the data. So I do have a recollection of something to do with Git-related secrets being exposed somewhere that might have been the vector for the hack. One of the pipe dreams I have, among many, is that we really don't have a canonical source of data breaches and attack vectors and all sorts of categorizations and other metadata attributes about them that would be really useful in discussions like this. It would be great if there was the Wikipedia of data breaches and it wasn't run by some multinational who was using it to make the big bucks, but it was there as a community service. It would be really interesting to have that where people could then contribute and go, well, actually, this is what happened. Wiki breaches, as James Randall says, I'd be happy with. Well, yeah, it just suddenly felt a bit WikiLeaks, which I think is a bit more, let's say a bit more controversial. But we don't have a canonical resource, and that's a little bit sucky. Let me tell you a few more things about Dubai since we're here, because that was an interesting experience. And one of those posts in particular got a lot of engagement on Twitter that was mostly good, some bad. I think I figured I'd flown through Dubai about 3 dozen times and never been outside the airport. And this was the first time we went out. And I had heard from many people that they either loved it or hated it. And the impression I always got was a bit like Vegas. So there's probably more people listening to this that have been to Vegas than Dubai, so maybe this will resonate. But the first time I went to Vegas, I flew in late one night. I had to do a talk first thing the next day, and then I flew straight out. And I just flew in, and there were like slot machines everywhere in the airport and smoke, and then you go in the casino, and it's smoke and noise, and I was just like, this place sucks. I really disliked it. And then the second time I went there, I had a bit more time, and a mate of mine took me out hiking, and we went out hiking in Red Rock Canyon, and it was like, oh, this actually isn't too bad. And then the third time, I was with Charlotte, and I was with Scott Helm and his wife as well, and we were just like Lamborghinis in the desert and shows and laying around by the pool in Kamar. Like, we just did all of the Vegas stuff, and I was like, all right, this, you don't want to live like this, but this is actually kind of fun if you just take that 1 week and you go a little bit nuts. And actually, my fourth time to Vegas was only 2 months ago. And we did a similar thing, just Charlotte and I, and it was good fun. It's very, very much like that in Dubai. The thing that really, really strikes me is people say there's a lot of excess, and I knew to expect that, but not that much. The amount of money just on the roads is nuts. Now, one of the things I learned is apparently there's no income tax in Dubai. So imagine, depending on where you are in the world, how much tax you pay. And if suddenly you had that to be able to spend on cars, designer handbags, houses, like whatever it is that is your thing, and it starts to explain it. But the cars in particular were just nuts. Now, what I mean by this is a car person. And if you're not a car person, this will only be a couple of minutes, maybe you'll get some of it. We see a lot of nice cars where we live in Australia, particularly at the schools where those parents have got a bit of money, and there's a lot of Range Rovers and things like this. But the equivalent in Dubai is Rolls Royces and gazillions of G63 AMG G-Wagons, very often of the Brabus variety, which is X number of hundreds of thousands of dollars more. Going into a car showroom and just seeing multiple Bugatti Chirons lined up, which are multiple millions of dollars each, to the point where in the showroom we're seeing Aston Martin Valkyrie and Ford GTs. Didn't see any Koenigseggs, surprised me actually. Ferrari F40, Ferrari F50, multiple Enzos, multiple LaFerraris. There was a LaFerrari there, LaFerrari Aperta, convertible, the Spider, that they were asking, I think in US dollars, it was approaching 10 million US dollars for the car. I didn't even notice the normal McLaren when I walked around there. So suddenly everything just changed context, right? Like the wealth and excess. And then we went to another car showroom and it was pretty much the same. And then we were driving back to the airport yesterday morning. I was like, gee, I didn't see that car showroom. There's like half a dozen Bugatti Chirons just all lined up. It is insane money. That surprised me to the extent of the wealth. A lot of Russians there as well. I asked ChatGPT, like, why are there so many Russians in Dubai? And apparently it's a combination of the UAE being pretty neutral on the current Russia situation, whereas most of us are from, including Australia, is pretty clear about how they feel about the whole Russia situation. Very, very easy to get visas as well. Apparently for the Russian folks, I imagine it'd be quite hard for someone who is Russian to come and visit Australia or Norway at the moment. And then, of course, Russia's maybe not the best place to be at the moment, so people want to travel. Which meant particularly the second place we stayed in Dubai, which was, for those of you that are familiar with the area, it was more around the Jamia Al Arab. That's that building that looks like a sail, that six-star hotel one. Didn't stay there, but near there. Around that area, just don't look a lot of Russian people. As 3Creepio says here, no Koenigsegg, tragic. There are quite a few of them in those parts. I'm sure we just didn't go to the right showroom. There are a lot of, it's kind of like there's layers, right? So we are very fortunate to have a McLaren at home. We have a 720S. We love it. To me, that was like, my God, like we have absolutely made it in life, be able to have the choice to have this. And then there's a completely different layer, which is Bugatti Chirons and Aston Martin Valkyries and the hypercar level. And then even around somewhere in between those, there's like, well, there's a lot of G-Wagons, but then they're Brabus G-Wagons. There's a lot of Ferraris, but they're Mansouri or Mansouri Rolls Royces or what's the Ferrari I'm thinking of? I forget. There's so many different things that you just, it's like information overload, looking around at all this stuff. As 3Creepio says, there's always another level. Yeah, and it is. And it's interesting because it changes your perspective, which is good. Shiny Doc says, morning from the UK, just catching you live for once before dashing off my holes for 2 weeks. Well, good on you. That's a Christmas holiday. Good man. So there was all that in Dubai. I remember hearing stories about Dubai, let's say 20 years ago. Now, Dubai has really only become what we know of Dubai today, I'd say in the last 10 to 15 years, based on my reading. You know, massive hires over huge amounts of wealth. Obviously, massive investment by the UAE government. Having a lot of oil seems to have helped. And I just recall all these stories about if you do the wrong thing there, not so much tolerance. Now, I say this having spent several years as a kid growing up in Singapore as well, as a teenager, which is very, very similar. Like, you just know as an expat living in a country like that, their rules are different to yours. For example, I remember being there, someone who was in a larger group of, like, circle of friends, someone I didn't know directly, but a lot of the time when you're expats there, you know people who know people. Anyway, this guy was 18, he spray painted some cars, corporal punishment, got caned, like literally, physically caned. Like, don't spray paint cars, that's dumb, that's stupid. If you do that at home, you get a proverbial kick up the butt and that's it. You do it in a place like Singapore, they pull down your pants and they whip your ass, like literally. It's a big thing. This must have been 1992, 1993, Bill Clinton got involved, big story. Anyway, so you expect that in places like Singapore and like Dubai. And for the most part, it feels very modern and open and Western. You know, we're sort of conscious, what will Charlotte and our 12-year-old daughter Elle wear? Like, do you have to cover up your shoulders or your head? Like, and for the, hotels are pretty much normal. No one really thinks too much about it. Certainly you go to the pool and you wear what you'd wear at the pool in Australia. And I don't think we really did anything different even in the wandering around town. Maybe in Oman when we were in little villages a little bit different. Or alcohol. You can still get a beer anywhere you want. Pretty much anywhere you want. Certainly any hotels, any nice restaurants. It costs a lot. I think every single meal we had in Dubai, short of I think one place that was in a much more local kind of restaurant for lunch, was eye-wateringly expensive. Staggeringly expensive. Like easily double what we'd pay for the same sort of thing at home. But for the most part, it's a fairly modern, liberal place. And then you just get these little glimpses where you're like, I'm not in Kansas anymore. So Charlotte was trying on some clothes in a store in Dubai Mall. It's the world's largest mall. Dubai Mall, Mall of Dubai, whichever one. It's the one near the Burj Khalifa, the massive tower. And you know when you go into a change room anywhere, normally there's like, there's like a front desk, there's a long hallway, and then there's all the doors. And all the doors, you go into the door, you lock the door, you get changed, check your clothes. When you're done, you come out. And Charlotte calls me, she's like, hey, come and have a look at this thing I'm trying on. So I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll go and have a look. And I walk over to the hallway, and I just about got crash tackled by two very small attendants who were like, you cannot come in here. It's like, I'm not like going into the room, I'm standing in the hallway because my wife is over there and she's called me to come and have a look. And like, they said, yeah, they could get fined. And that was when I decided you can't really argue that anymore. Or sitting around the pool. This was the one that actually made me want to go home. It's so minor, but it was just touched a raw nerve. You go to the pool at the hotel. There are 9 lifeguards around a very small pool that is 1.2 meters deep and has nobody in it. 9 lifeguards. And Elle, our 12-year-old daughter, gets a mocktail in a plastic cup like we do at any swimming pool, pretty much anywhere in the world, and sits in the pool with the plastic cup and the mocktail, which you're not allowed to do. Very unhappy. and she took her plastic cup. And I was just like, I've been to like a lot of nice pools and a lot of nice hotels, and the thing you do is you always end up like laying there in the pool with a beer or a glass of champagne or something, and it's nice, and it's a plastic glass because it could break and all the rest of it. So anyway, there's just these little glimpses, these little reminders that things were very, very different. I really enjoyed my trip there. I'll be happy to go back to Dubai. I am really now enjoying being in Oslo, which is a lot more familiar for us. Because of the Norwegian history, as well as just everything else societally is, I guess, much more on point with the way we are at home. Now, last thing before I go on to some InfoSec bits. There was one set of responses to one tweet that I ended up doing a larger thread on. When I went to the first, like, ridiculously over-the-top car showroom, and I took some photos, there was a very, very nice Pagani, there was a Bugatti Divo, Chiron Divo. There was, what else was in the picture? There was a Valkyrie and something else. I'm trying to remember what it was. Anyway, put the tweet on, and I was like, shopping in Dubai, like, which one would you take, kind of thing. Now, it's not like I was going there to buy one of these cars. It was clearly just window shopping. And so it was a little bit like the Twitter of old. It made me a little bit reminiscent, actually, because there was a lot of engagement. Most people were like, this is freaking awesome. Is that a Valkyrie? No way. Cool. And then there was this like 1% of people who were very upset at how much I was enjoying looking at cars. And it just fascinates me why someone would be upset with that. And I ended up doing a thread on it, and I sort of explained, for me, cars they're an ambition thing. And I actually had the tweet that I'd put out in 2017 about that McLaren 720. I was like, wow, this is like, I'm beginning to covet this. Like, this is obviously a dream. And then many, 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 many years later, finally having that ability in life to go and buy that thing that had been an ambition and a driver and a motivation. And I felt so good about it. And everyone that sees it loves it. And it's such a nice, positive thing. But there's keyboard warriors. And I think what it boils down to is it's this tall poppy syndrome situation. I think it's a very Australian term, but it is the displeasure at the success or perceived success of other people, and the desire to then go out and bash the keyboard and rant and rave about it. Now, if you go and have a look at my recent tweets, I'll put a link to it in the notes later on, and you have a look at some of those responses, no one's ever going to say that to you in person. No one ever says that in person. It's kind of like it's a lesson you teach the kids. Like, don't say anything to someone or about someone unless you'd be willing to say it to their face. And I think that applies online. Okay, let's do some data stuff. InfoSec data breach stuff. Failed Microsoft account logins. Now, I got up one morning a couple of days ago, and I had an alert that someone was trying to just send this from 3 Creepio. If you're in Norway, you have to respect Jante. So Jante, I think Janteloven is the full word, isn't it? Which is like the tall poppy syndrome. It's about not showing success or wealth or being demure. I think there's a little bit of a Scandinavian behavioural trait. Apparently I got that right. I am practicing. My Duolingo is going great. Thank you. It's a personal thing. Anna, I'll stop on that. Where were we? Failed login attempt. So I got up one morning and I had an email about failed login attempts to a Microsoft account. And it took me a while to join the dots, but it was failed. It was, I forget how they phrased it, was unusual behaviour observed on Ari's account, my 15-year-old son. And it was about 11 p.m. or something, which is well after our bedtime. And I said to him in the morning, so mate, were you like logging in or anything last night? So no. And his account was pretty locked down. I was pretty sure that wasn't the problem. So we go into his Microsoft account, look at failed login attempts, and pretty much 2 times every hour for about the last 24 hours, there had been a failed attempt to log into his account. This kind of surprises me because he's only 15 and he doesn't do a lot of stuff online, even though he's had the account for years, that email address hasn't really been a lot of places. Now, inevitably, it might have been enough places, but there was just this constant flow of people trying to log into the account. And when you look at the information that Microsoft gives you about the login attempts as well, they're all over the world. You know, it's just like jumping from somewhere in South America to somewhere in Africa to somewhere in the Middle East, backwards and forwards. And then I went into my Microsoft account and saw exactly the same thing over the same period. And I tweeted this publicly. And a lot of people came back and said the same thing, seeing the same behavior. Now, some of the responses to this, I think, had kind of missed what was going on here, because they would say things like, well, obviously your username and password were exposed in a data breach somewhere and someone's logging into your account. No, that's not what happened. Every single one of these is a login attempt for the correct email address and the wrong password. Now, keeping in mind an email address is pretty much a public attribute. Your email only works by giving it to someone else. It is not a secret. Now, what that means is anyone that knows your email address can create those log events that we were seeing for Ari's account and for my account. Now, of course, on top of that, you have a strong password. So if you have that, you're solid. And then, of course, if you have multi-factor authentication as well, you're even more solid. And as many people said, you can turn on passwordless. Now, that's something that we have now done for his account. So I'm not sure if someone tries to log onto that account now, if it will just jump straight to passwordless, which will then send the prompt to the multi-factor authentication app, the Microsoft Authenticator. I imagine, yeah, I'm going to have to check that now. That's interesting. I did find, going in and setting that up for him, I do worry about what happens with that Authenticator app if his phone disappears. Now, fortunately, we have other recovery options, which I won't go into detail on for obvious reasons. But I love that passwordless option. But then again, does it really matter if you've got a strong password and multi-factor authentication anyway? Possibly not. You can't be phished. But if you're using multi-factor authentication, which is the same as using the Microsoft Authenticator app, which is just what they do for passwordless, well, then really you've just taken away one factor, haven't you? If someone like me, who thinks a lot about this stuff, has to sit here and wonder which one actually makes the most sense, how do you think it is for most people? Interesting. I didn't see passkey as an option. I do like the passkeys. I think passkeys are a great model. If anyone knows if you can use a passkey in your Microsoft account, please let me know. But I think the options there are pretty much physical security key, SMS, or Microsoft Authenticator app. So, interesting. A couple of data breaches. I found time this morning to process 2 data breaches, and part of the reason I did these both together is one of the things we're noticing with Have I Been Pwned, now that we're doing massive edge caching at Cloudflare, such that as people query the k-anonymity hash ranges, if you don't know what that is, go and Google it. Long story, I won't get into it now. But as people start to search for email addresses, we gradually build up a cache model at Cloudflare's 300 plus edge nodes. So what happens is we load a data breach, we flush everything out of the Cloudflare edge nodes, instantaneously all the traffic goes to the origin. After about a day, 50% of the traffic is already cached, and then it takes many more days and you get down to small single-digit percentages. What it means is that every time we load a data breach and suddenly 100% of traffic goes to the origin, we have to scale up in order to support that. And it's costing us. Looking at the numbers the other day, it looks like it's costing us hundreds of dollars every single time because of the volume of traffic that's coming through. Now, we do have some strategies in the works to reduce that volume of traffic, largely to do with trying to work with some subscribers who are just hammering it in ways that are unnecessary. But one of the things that makes it more efficient is if I can load multiple breaches sequentially, bam, 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 bam. Now, I don't want to be like pushing stuff back and holding it back until I've got a corpus of it, because the whole value of getting a data breach in Have I Been Pwned is to get it there early. I had a good meeting with a company in Dubai, and someone used the term where they said time is a multiplier. So time from breach is a multiplier of the risk to the individuals and the value to the attacker. So small amounts of time are valuable to the attacker, large amounts of time are a risk to the individuals. So I want to get stuff as fast as possible. But if, like today, if these 2 breaches I'll talk about in a moment, if I can load one and suddenly our cache hit ratio goes from 99% to 0%, but then it comes back up to 1%, and then I load the next and it goes back to 0%, and then it eventually gets up to 99. That's much more efficient than like loading it, giving it a day, cache hit ratio has gone up to 50%, and then I just flush the whole thing and go back to zero again. But I don't want, this is what I was trying to explain to Charlotte today, I don't want a situation, I'm trying to think through the right wording for this, where there is a financial incentive to delay loading a breach. And that financial incentive is avoiding cost. So we've got to work that out. Stefan is coming to visit us here in Norway tomorrow for a couple of days for our first ever Have I Been Pwned team meeting, now that there are three of us and it's not just Charlotte and I. And this is one of the things we're going to be working on. So we're going to spend a couple of days trying to solve many of these problems, which are just a little bit easier to do face to face. Now, two data breaches. These are not biggies by any stretch of the imagination, but they were sitting there on the to-do list, and I just wanted to, frankly, get them done. Now, the first one just here is Tibber. Tibber? It's a German name. This is a German electricity provider, and they had 50,000 records breached last month in the news, which makes it a bit easier to deal with because at least disclosure-wise, we know that that's already happened. Name, email address, geolocation, and the total purchase value. 56% of those were already in Have I Been Pwned. But yes, it's 50,000 records. It's a very, very small incident. And I think I said before, no matter what the size of a data breach is, it's pretty much the same amount of effort for me to process. If it's 50,000 records or 50 million records, it's not, I don't think it's even, it's not like 1.2 times the effort, even though it's 1,000 times the exposure to impacted individuals. So I'm always a little bit reticent to deal with things that are as small as tens of thousands of records when there's other ones that are millions of records just pending. And to put that in context, I've got three that I've just been running the numbers on here that I have to deal with. I've got one here, that's 300,000. Okay, that's not particularly large. I've got another here, that's 2 million. I've got another one here, which is taking a long time to process, but it's an aggregation of different sources, and that looks like it's in the tens, if not hundreds of millions. They're always a little bit trickier when it's an aggregation of things because I've got to figure out what to do with it. Anyway, the point is that little stuff like this, it kind of feels like a mental weight where I don't want to leave it. I don't want to not notify people that they've been in these breaches because I don't think in either of these the individuals have been told by the companies. But the ROI in terms of the impact that they have is just, yeah, it's not good. Be that as it may, I loaded another one that's even smaller. Now, this one is from Senegal. This may be the first Senegalese data breach we've ever had. I had to check that with ChatGPT. It is Senegalese. Senegalese payment platform, Yonima, had 36,000 unique email addresses. Breached and posted publicly last month. Data include name, phone, and encrypted password and date of birth, which is a little bit unusual to encrypt a password and not hash it. And it's a little bit unusual to do anything at all with the date of birth. But, you know, good on them. I'm not sure what the situation is in terms of the exposure of the private key used for that, which of course would render the encryption immediately useless, but who knows. 52% of those already in Have I Been Pwned, which I thought was a little bit high for a Senegalese data breach. They're not exactly the biggest market for Have I Been Pwned, is Senegal. Anyway, so that's up there now. I've quote tweeted Cyber Underground Feed, a Twitter account here, because it was picked up by them. The post to a public hacking forum, popular public clear web hacking forum, was tweeted by this Twitter account, and there's probably a solid dozen Twitter accounts that are doing a really good job of finding things published, particularly to one hacking forum, but a few others as well, and tweeting about them very quickly. And one of the things I'm lamenting at the moment is how public does a data breach need to be in order to make a reasonable assumption that the company should know about it? Now, that the Tibber one, there's press about it. In the press, it said there was a statement from the company. So they know about it, that's fine. In a lot of other incidents, you might have the data has been published. It's either freely downloadable or put up for sale. Either way, news of the breach is out there, and it's on a ClearWeb popular hacking forum. And then very frequently, it's been picked up by multiple different Twitter accounts that have then shared this with, let's see how many people. How many people see these? Because now I can see, of course, stats there. This Senegalese one, 8,400 views. So I've had 8,400 instances of people having seen that this particular organisation's had a breach. Is that sufficient? This one was a little bit different. I think being Senegal and frankly not expecting to get a response at all, should we do disclosure, and it was there in multiple different forums or tweets. I guess the point I'm getting to is, at what point do you go, this is socialised enough publicly that it's unnecessary to contact the organisation? There's another one I'm trying to do disclosure on at the moment. It's over 1 million email addresses. I've verified it. It's valid. It's an American company that's let's just say it's an American company that's large enough. And I've tried to reach out to them, even though they're there on the Twitter timeline multiple times over with claims of data breach. When is it sufficient to say that there is enough information in the public domain to skip the painful, laborious process of trying to contact the organisation? Now, part of the problem as well in contacting the organisation is, particularly this year, on multiple occasions when I've done that, the first response I get is from a lawyer. And we have never had any serious legal incidents. Honest, we've never had any serious ones. I think in part because I'm very nice whenever they contact me. But as soon as you get contacted by a lawyer, particularly after having reached out to, say, the CTO or the CISO or something like that, the amount of effort that goes into the communication with the organisation to explain what the hell this service is, why I have the data, that I'm not some shady bastard just selling their company info, and I'm definitely not the person that hacked it. And all the while, this process goes through, often for weeks, and that time as a multiplier paradigm comes up again, where the data's out there on the public hacking forum, it's being socialised, it's on Twitter, it's with big red lights all over it, and I'm not letting our impacted subscribers know because this company is trying to figure out what position to take. It'd be very easy just to go, just load the data. This one today, I could have just loaded the data. All the notifications would have been sent already. The individuals impacted by it could have done the things that they need to do to protect themselves, changing passwords, for example, looking out for phishing emails, identity theft, all the rest of it. And then the company could have done the mop-up after that. Now, I don't want to leave the company in that situation, but I lament that, say in the case this one I'm now waiting for disclosure on, that data is out there circulating through who knows how many hands. Certainly, news of the incident is in front of thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. I just don't know if the company knows. Maybe that's something we'll fix in 2025. I don't think it is. I think I'll find better ways of dealing with it. I don't think I'll fix it, but we'll see. Maiden Mohan says, have you studied graph theory? No, I've heard of it. I don't understand it, and I haven't studied it. All right, folks, I've been going about 40 minutes now. I'm going to wrap it up here and go out and try and get a little bit of sunshine in Oslo while it lasts. And in about a week, I want to do this again with Scott Helm from a cabin up in the snow. It'll be almost Christmas a week from now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you again from Norway in a week. See you, folks.